Welcome to the Ghostly Gallery podcast, a place where we explore the world of horror and mystery in film, television, literature, and in popular culture. Well, greetings, everyone. Welcome to another show. My name is Bruce Markison. As always, I'm joined by producer and co-host Tracy Asteria. Tracy, we welcome you to the program as well. What's going on with you?
Not too much. Everything's been going really well, and I'm just trying to enjoy the last couple weeks of summer. It just feels like it's flying by so fast. It feels like yesterday we were still in the grips of winter.
Hmm.
So definitely trying to keep calm and relax. That was everything with you.
Good. So I had an exciting weekend last weekend. It was Hall of Fame weekend here in Cooperstown. And in addition to all of my regular duties, I had a chance while on lunch break to walk around the town and see who was here in Cooperstown. So I was actually looking for the actors from The Sandlot, the movie that came out in the mid 1990s with James Earl Jones and Dennis Leary and a bunch of really good child actors, many of whom have gone on to acting as adults. But on my way to trying to find those guys at the corner of Main and Pioneer Streets, I saw that one of my favorites, actress Bitty Schramm, was signing autographs at one of the stores, Yastrzemski Sports, where my nephew happens to work. He didn't tell me about this. Probably didn't know that I would be that interested. But I got to meet Bitty Schramm and her representative, Brian Zychik. They were both very nice. Now, Bitty Schramm, for those not aware, starred in the great baseball movie from 1992, A League of Their Own, which is my favorite baseball movie ever. And she also starred for 2.5 seasons on one of my favorite TV shows, and that is Monk. She played Sharona, the so-called nurse to Monk. Eventually, she did leave the show. I guess she had asked for a little bit more money than what the producers were willing to give her. They probably should have given it to her, although the replacement ended up doing very well. But she ended up leaving after just a couple of seasons, 2.5, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a chance to meet her. And you know how we sometimes we meet the people that we really like in film, TV, whatever it might be. And then we find out, yeah, they're not so great. They're not so friendly. Well, that was not the case here. Bitty Schramm was so kind, so nice. I told her I worked at the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
Told her I'd love to take her around the hall, give her maybe a little behind the scenes tour at some point. She was very excited about that, as was her representative, Brian. Brian ended up giving me his business card, told me that he's representative for a number of other actresses as well. So that was kind of exciting. But they were just so cordial, so warm and friendly, talking to me, not just because I bought a photograph, signed photograph, had Bitty sign it to me and Sue. I think they were genuinely excited about the fact that, I work at the Hall of Fame
Mm-hmm.
and that, of course, Bitty has the connection to baseball. Years and years ago, we had a reunion. It was the 10th anniversary reunion for A League of Their Own. And we invited a number of the actors and actresses. And I mentioned this to Bitty, and I said, I'm pretty sure we sent out an invitation to you. And she said, probably the reason I couldn't go, this was 2002. This was 10 years after the movie came out.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when she was making Monk. She was doing, weekly episodes.
Right.
And didn't really have the time to travel. She was guessing that was the reason why she couldn't make it. So it was kind of exciting to get a chance to talk to her. She did have a chance over the weekend to go into the Hall of Fame, which I think was her first time there. And the way she was talking sounds like she might come back for future inductions. So that would be really cool.
Oh, wow.
So that was the highlight of my weekend.
Oh, that's exciting, Bruce. That is so cool. That is
I love
really
that.
cool. Did you get a chance to meet anybody else? Was there anybody else on site?
Well, I certainly, met and talked to a number of Hall of Famers as part of my
Mhm.
job. I did an interview Saturday morning with Jim Leland, Hall of Fame manager, who was great leader with the Detroit Tigers and the Pittsburgh Pirates, among other franchises. But in terms of non-baseball celebrities, I didn't really see anybody else. I
Mhm.
was so excited about this happenstance meeting with Biddy Schramm that I just sort of forgot about the guys from the Sandlot and said, "Well, I'm not gonna top this. Let me go back to work." And that's what we ended up doing, so, yeah.
That sounds like the perfect way for the weekend to go, absolutely, because you probably were so busy that entire weekend, just to be able to catch those few minutes of excitement must have been a treat, absolutely.
Yeah, this was during a little bit of a quiet time. I had lunch early in the afternoon. We were getting ready for the Hall of Fame parade down Main Street that evening. So I wanted to walk around. I wanted to see the guys from the Sandlot, but I also wanted to get a sense for how busy the town was.
Mhm.
And it was very busy. I'd heard that the boxer Mike Tyson was signing on Main Street. That turned out to be true, although I wasn't really interested in paying $200 for his autograph.
Wow.
Yeah, let me say that I got Billy Schramm's autograph at much cheaper prices than that. But it was fun. There were a lot of people in town, not just baseball players, as you can see, but
Mm.
actors, boxers, various other celebrities. A very cool weekend for those who have never been to Cooperstown for Hall of Fame weekend. Even if you're not a diehard baseball fan, it's something you should try to do if you can at least once in your lifetime.
Oh my goodness. I'll have to put that on my list of to-dos. Absolutely, because 'cause I've never been, so but it sounds exciting.
It really was. I'm going to put you down as a yes for Hall of Fame weekend 2026. So we'll
Sounds
expect
like a plan.
So that was very exciting, but also exciting is our plan for tonight's program. Now, this is episode number 99. So just one away from our milestone show, which folks will find out about eventually. But for this week's episode, Tracy and I are going to look back at two films, both dealing with the world of the occult, but in very different ways. One came out 50 years ago, August of 1975. It is the very memorable, though also very weird, bizarre movie called The Devil's Rain. And the other movie, not nearly as strange, was released in August of 1965. So that's 60 years ago. And that is the Amicus film known as The Skull, which is really overlooked. I think a lot of people maybe have not seen this movie and probably should. So those are the two movies
Mhm.
that we'll put the focus on in tonight's episode. So, Tracy, let's begin with a movie that did come out 50 years ago, 1975's The Devil's Rain. So, it's set in the southwestern desert, and the movie centers on the Preston family, which has been saddled with a curse enforced by Jonathan Corbus, a satanic priest from the colonial era who has been reincarnated somehow in the current day. Once burned at the stake for his involvement with witchcraft and Satanism, Corbus has been terrorizing the Preston family for generations, in part through this curse, all in his effort to obtain a book that was taken from him by the Preston family descendants. The book contains the signatures of the various members of his cult, and those signatures bind their souls to Satan or something, as the movie tries to explain. In the opening scene, which is set in a driving rainstorm, Mark Preston, played by William Shatner, has returned to his mother's house after searching for his kidnapped father, Steve. Well, soon after, Steve does arrive at the house. He's on the front porch, but his face is obviously deformed. He then tells Mark to give Corbus the book so as to avoid any further trouble. And then Steve literally melts away in front of his wife and son, turning into some kind of a waxy substance. So Mark is then motivated to leave the house. There's a truck that arrives for him. He's planning to go in the truck, but then he sees there's no driver. The friend of his that was supposed to drive the truck's not there. And he's planning to go confront Corbus. That's what he wants to do. But just as he gets to this truck and is ready to leave the house, he hears his mother let out this desperate scream. Well, Mark runs back into the house, discovers that his mother has been abducted by the Corvus cult, while their friend John is found hanging upside down from the ceiling, but still alive. Hanging from the ceiling upside down. Think about that for a moment. Now, Mark eventually does meet Corvus, but it does not go well. He discovers that his mother is now part of the cult. She has been taken against her will and somehow has been brain locked into following Corvus and his people. Now trapped in the church where the Satanists meet, which is basically in this really creepy ghost town, Mark is soon surrounded by the cult members, leaving us to wonder what his fate will be. We'll find out a bit later. In the meantime, Mark's brother, Tom Preston, sets out to find Mark. So Tom and his wife travel to this same ghost town where they hear that Mark is gone. And there they are attacked by the Satanists, but Tom is able to escape and continue his pursuit of the evil Corvus. Tom wants to take Corvus down and also take down the entire cult, who have apparently killed his father, kidnapped his mother, and now his brother Mark. But Tom really faces a difficult chore given the size of this satanic group and the depth of conspiracy that is all around him. Now, on the surface, the plot to The Devil's Reign might seem straightforward, but in actuality, the storyline can be very confusing and at times incomprehensible. The cult, for some reason, is bent on melting people, which is never really explained. It's all very weird, but also kind of compelling too, which is why the film has always kept my attention. I've seen it now 5 or 6 times, and I always manage to watch it all the way through, trying to understand what's going on, and maybe understanding a little bit more each time, but never getting there quite 100%. So those are my initial thoughts on the film. Basic recap of the storyline. Tracy, what are some of the thoughts that came immediately to mind when you watched The Devil's Reign for the first time?
I thought I was having like a fever dream watching this one. It was my very first time seeing it. You and I, we've talked about this film before. And it's actually come up a couple of times when we were talking to a few of our past guests. But I decided, okay, let's sit down and actually give this one a really good shot. I was super excited to see William Shatner in a horror film.
Yeah.
And really interested in seeing like all these weird and creepy things. Because I heard about like these melting people and the whole cult aspect and just the overall involvement from like a real Satanist. So I found the movie and I found it on Tubi. I stopped it. I had to stop it right after the very long, drawn out and creepy intro that must have been like, I don't know, 10 minutes long. It was like a super long, weird intro. And I thought, like,
Do you mean the credits?
yeah, the intro credits.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because it was like
That bizarre music?
creepy. Yes.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden the movie started. And I was like, wait a minute, now, what is this? And I thought maybe like the platform Tubi might have like skipped over like a piece of the story. So I just kind of like backed it up and started it again. And no, that's exactly how the movie started. So I was like, okay, that's fine. It was very creepy. Like the whole entire thing was very creepy. And like all of the satanic chanting that was going on, I kept looking around the room waiting for like this portal to hell to open up in the floor. But yeah, that's kind of like my initial kind of thoughts is like I was super excited, a little bit paranoid, and just kind of like wondering what was going on for most of the time.
I'm glad you mentioned the opening credits because I didn't talk about that. But the music is this very cacophonous, disturbing sounding music.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it almost didn't sound like really music. It was just meant to sort of warp your mind in a way. And then the imagery was also very disturbing. I guess they're paintings done by the artist Hieronymus Bosch, apparently.
Really?
Yeah,
Hmm.
really weird stuff, and that gets you. It really fits the movie. It gets you right in. But the credits do go on for quite a while.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I was just kind of like, I didn't know how long it was gonna go on, but it really left me feeling disturbed. I mean, the whole imagery, like the people screaming, and it was so weird. But yeah, absolutely set the tone for the impending movie.
And so many horror movies today, movies in general, they skip the credits a lot of time.
Mhm.
They sometimes don't show credits at all. Maybe they give you a title card, and that's about it. And
Yeah.
even sometimes you don't get that. And here, this is a film that actually is able to use the opening credits to create a mood. So I think that's a really interesting part. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
It's also a movie that leaves us with so many questions. I have just a few. So at the very beginning, with the scene where William Shatner is arriving at this ranch house, I believe it's Arizona, it's somewhere in the Southwest, even though it's filmed in Durango, Mexico. It's a driving rainstorm. It's like we're thrown into the middle of the story and like we've missed the first 15 minutes of the actual plot. We have no explanation of what's been going on. So it really does take some time to get your bearings to figure
Mhm.
out what's proceeding here. And even then, you're not able to complete the whole puzzle. Also, Mark Preston refers to this mysterious truck that they're waiting for. And that never gets explained. What exactly is the nature of this truck? Who's driving the truck? Where's the truck supposed to take them? Is it supposed to take them to Corbus? Or does he make that decision on the fly? Well, that's never explained to us. Also, another question is, once Corbus has kidnapped Mrs. Preston, the mother to Mark, and turned her into a Satanist, we have to ask, why didn't he just find out where the book was from her? She knew. She knew where it was hidden in the floorboards of their house. Could have done that. That could have
Mhm.
solved a lot of their problems for the cult, but he didn't do that. So that's kind of a plot hole. And then to me, the biggest question, and I still don't know the answer, what exactly is the devil's rain? Is it the physical rain that happens during these meltings that we see at the beginning and the end of the film? Or is it the strange artifact that looks like a television set inside of it with the souls of past victims captured by Corbus and they're all kind of wailing in pain and torture? I mean, is that the devil's rain? Because at one point it's referred to as that, but then you think, well, the physical rain must be the devil's rain, but maybe that makes too much sense. So I don't know. Did you have any idea what the devil's rain actually was?
I thought it was kind of like the acid rain that was melting these people.
Okay.
That's what I thought it was. But when they were holding like that, I don't know, like that lantern TV thing with the screaming people inside, I'm like, well, maybe that is the devil's rain. And it's a play
Yeah.
on words, like rain is in like the rain coming down and just like rain of power. Like I wasn't sure. It was very strange.
Yeah, really bizarre. Acid rain. That's a good real world explanation there. Now, one thing we should point out about this movie, Tracy, the making of The Devil's Rain was allegedly marred by a series of accidents and mishaps. And some people say that that was caused by the film's satanic content. And I think you made reference to this earlier. We have Anton LaVey, the founder of the Church of Satan, actually appears in the film. He's one of the high priests, small role. But more significantly, he served as a consultant to the director, Robert Fust. Robert Fust, the man who earlier directed a terrific movie, The Abominable Dr. Phibes, and also did the sequel, Dr. Phibes Rises Again. Now, these incidents and accidents that are a source of debate, they're always referenced. I looked all over the internet. I couldn't find any specific examples of what happened on set. Somebody get hurt? Did somebody get
Mhm.
close to being killed? Now, we've heard about this associated with movies like The Exorcist, Rosemary's Baby, other films. but I could never find any concrete examples of supposed mishaps, accidents happening. So you've got some people claiming that, well, maybe they never happened. Maybe that's just an urban legend.
Oh,
So that remains very much
interesting.
mysterious.
Mhm.
Now, there is one person who would corroborate the belief that there were incidents on set, and that's the late great Ernest Borgnine. Now, he plays maybe the most memorable role in the film, which we're going to talk about. But he apparently, well after this film came out, he vowed never again to do a movie dealing with devil worship or anything close to that kind of subject matter. And it was specifically because of these supposed incidents that happened on set. That's what Borgnine said. Now,
Wow.
maybe he's not remembering right. Maybe he's exaggerating. I don't know. But Borgnine seems to be the source of this belief that things did happen on set. Now, there was later a film that Borgnine did, which wasn't exactly satanic, but it did get into religious sects, a strange religious sects. The word I'm saying is sects.
Mhm.
And that movie was Deadly Blessing. And in that movie, Borgnine plays the leader of a local religious sect that seems to be rather dangerous and seems to be rather imposing. So he did do that movie, and I want to say that came out in 1980 or 81. Wasn't strictly devil worship, but was somewhat related to offbeat religious groups, if you will.
Oh, wow.
Now, another thing that Borgnine claimed, and this is really interesting, and I don't know again if this is true, but he publicly came out and said he was never paid for his work in The Devil's Reign. And that was supposedly because the film was funded by the mafia. So that's really interesting. So again,
Huh.
this coming from Ernest Borgnine. Now, on a lighter note, one of the film's featured players, that's William Shatner, who plays Mark Preston, one of the two heroic Preston brothers. And this is kind of funny. He had to leave production for 3 days so that he could attend a Star Trek convention that summer. So that's kind of funny. Now, you might wonder, well, does that kind of thing normally happen during filming? I don't really know. But you think about it with this movie, there were so many other characters in this film, so many other great actors, name brand actors. It was probably not that difficult for them to work around Shatner's absence for 3 days while he went to the convention. Speaking of this cast, Tracy, it is one of the greatest casts in horror history. In addition to Borgnine and Shatner, you have a very young Tom Skerritt as Tom Preston. I know you're a big fan of Tom Skerritt, as am I.
Mhm.
We have Eddie Albert, best known for his work in TV's Green Acres. And also, he did a great job as the evil warden in the football film set in a prison. For some reason, the name of it is escaping me. But it's a film that came out in 1974. Burt Reynolds is in it. It'll come to me at some point.
Mhm.
So Eddie Albert's in this movie too, although he doesn't appear until well into the storyline. He takes on a role as a psychic researcher who tries to help the Preston family. And when he meets with Tom Preston, he very much believes all the things that Tom says about his brother disappearing, about the possibility of some sort of supernatural factors, some sort of a satanic cult going on. So even though he doesn't appear probably until at least half an hour in, he does play a fairly significant role toward the latter half of the movie. Then you have Ida Lupino, very famous actress. She plays Mrs. Preston. Keenan Wynn, longtime character actor. He plays the local sheriff. Woody Chambliss is in this movie, another prominent character actor. And maybe most interestingly, a very young John Travolta, albeit in a very small role. And later, many years later, when he was asked about this film, Travolta said, "Oh, that's a terrible movie." He's talking about The Devil's Reign. He wasn't a big fan of it. However, during the filming, he met co-star Joan Prather, who plays Tom Skerritt's wife. And apparently Joan Prather was the person who introduced Travolta to Scientology. That's where it all got started. back in
Hmm.
1975, 50 years ago. So this is a who's who, not only of horror, but really of acting in general. You've got old veterans and then newcomers like John Travolta, all part of the cast. Now, Borgnine is especially over the top in his role, particularly when he transforms himself from Corbus into some kind of goat like creature. And this happens near the end. The goat makeup is a little bit ridiculous, but also a little bit frightening too. And I love it when he first turns into this goat demon and then yells out angrily, "Who calls me from out of the pit?" I mean, I started laughing when I first saw it. It's a pretty funny moment, even though it's supposed to be terrifying. So this gives you an example of some of the things that are going on. There's some unintentional comedy along with this inherent creepiness that you mentioned as well. So that's a rundown of pretty much all the key actors in this cast. So Tracy, I wanted to ask you, of all the main actors, who stood out as really good in your mind? Who'd you really like?
Oh, that's so hard to choose, but I have a quick question before I tell you.
Okay.
Was John Travolta, his role was like, must have been super small because I couldn't pick him out. Was he like the person that Tom Skerritt was like choking to death on the stairwell? Is that the character that he played? Do you
I
recall?
think he comes up later. And I think when
Okay.
you see Travolta, he doesn't have eyes. And that's another thing that happens throughout the movie. The satanic cultists, it's like their eyes have been blacked out completely. It's like they have
Okay.
holes in their eye slots. So it doesn't exactly look like Travolta. Now, this is around the same time when he was doing Welcome Back, Kotter. I think Welcome Back, Kotter started shortly after that. So he doesn't look anything like the character in that TV series. He doesn't have like poofed up hair or anything like that.
Okay.
But he does have the blackened eyes, the hollowed out eye slots. So you have to look really quickly. And if you look quickly and you're looking at the right spot, you'll see that it's him. I don't know that he has any spoken words. Maybe he has a couple, but he's not a prominent player like a lot of these other people that we mentioned. But he is in the
Oh,
movie.
yeah.
He is in the
Oh,
movie, and
interesting.
I want to say it was his first feature film that he did.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay, because I was trying to scan and try to figure out which guy he was, and for the life of me, I couldn't figure out who he was. So,
Yeah,
oh, that's pretty cool.
right.
So, my stand-up performance, it was really hard, I have 2. So, the first one is obviously William Shatner,
Yeah.
um, only because he was his usual over the top, um, highly dramatic self. And I think he did, like, super. Because, like, for me, it is so hard to put him in a role other than Captain Kirk. And I know that he's had so many roles in his career, he was Twilight Zone and TJ Hooker and, like, all kinds of different stuff. But, he's Captain Kirk. So it was, like, really cool to see him in something different. And he was still so dramatic and theatrical and
Mhm.
like, "I'm dying." Yeah, and right? It's like, "I'm melting."
Yeah.
So I just for that, I just think it was so cool. And, of course, the other one was Tom Skerritt. I really like him, really, really like him. He always plays that straight-laced, no-nonsense type of character, and it really worked for him in this really bizarre movie. And of course, shout out to Ernest Borgnine. Super comical. Like you mentioned, the whole goat transformation. I nearly lost it. I could have dropped into the portal.
Yeah.
But those guys, they truly made this movie rememberable. And, it was worth the watch for sure. So I would place my bets with those guys.
How did you like Shatner in the Western wear he was wearing?
I don't think I ever saw him in jeans before.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the cowboy hat. Yeah, very interesting. No, it didn't really suit him.
He's starting to put a little bit of weight on by this point. It's about 10 years after Star Trek, but
Oh,
he
yeah,
still looks
that's
good.
true.
He
Yeah,
still looks good.
no,
I
that's
think still
true.
has his real hair. I don't think he You gone to any augmenting of hair pieces or anything like that?
Not at that point, I don't
Yeah.
imagine.
Skerritt, is really interesting because just a few years later, he made a huge name for himself as one of the heroic figures in Alien.
Mm. Mhm.
He's the leader
Yeah.
of that mission. Of course, I remember him for a non-horror film role, TV series that he did in the mid 1990s, which I love, and that's Picket Fences.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Yes, yes,
he was
yes.
great in that. I mean,
He's
he's always
he's
good.
good.
He's
Yeah,
always
he
good.
really is.
Yeah, but his character is very heroic. He tells his wife after they've gone into that really eerie ghost town. They've escaped from the satanic worshipers who are trying to kill them or capture them, convert them. They then drive outside of the town, and he basically tells his wife, "Here, you take the car. I'm going to head back. I've got to find my brother Mark." So he's very much the hero throughout, and he's a guy you're really rooting for in this
Right.
film, and he does a nice job with it. He's always good in that heroic role. So here with this movie, we have an interesting story, even though it's convoluted, hard to follow. And we have a star-studded cast, even though some of the folks don't have roles that befit their stature. And of course, highlighted by an unforgettable appearance by Ernest Borgnine that we've talked about. Given all these ingredients, The Devil's Reign could have been a classic. But the storyline is just so difficult to follow at times, almost incomprehensible, really. I mean, the first time I watched it, I had no idea what was going on. After about 5 or 6 watches, I have a little bit better idea, but I'm still not there. And then the special melting effects, which the film's producers heralded, they said this was going to be the greatest ending in horror history. Well, it's not. I thought the effects were somewhat of a disappointment. They were practical effects, but I thought they looked a bit cheesy. And that final melting, I think it took over 10 minutes. I mean, it was drawn out way too long. It's like they used every bit of film footage that they had. We've got to see every one of these satanic worshipers melting to the ground, get every one of them on tape. I mean, they could have done that in 3 or 4 minutes, and it took 10. So it really went on for a long period of time. So that was disappointing. I look at this movie, Tracy, and to me, this is one of those films primed for a modern day remake. Clean up the script, improve special effects. Certainly those are available 50 years later in today's movie making industry. Do those things and you could really have a gem. I'd love to see someone like a Guillermo del Toro tackle this film and run with it. What do you think? Do you think a modern day director could even out some of the problems here, make this more comprehensible, and make this a modern day classic? Do you think that's possible?
Yes, yes, absolutely. I think it is one of those movies that if you put it into the right hands, um, it can be done. I really do. Like modernize it, revamp it for today's crowd. I really think they could do it, honestly. Like even Mike Flanagan, like I'm a
Yeah,
huge Mike Flanagan fan. I
sure.
think just having somebody like one of those guys, I think they could do wonderful things. I mean, even Harrison Smith, I could,
Yeah,
honestly, I think he could take this and make it his own. Like, honestly, like those are the type of guys that I think could really excel with something like this because it's a good story. It really
yeah,
is.
yeah, it is.
Um, put a little more, meat into it. And, I think it's awesome. They could do it.
So as it is, this 1975 film directed by Robert Fust is a cult favorite all these years later. Even though it's disjointed and edited somewhat haphazardly, it's actually a movie that damaged his career. It forced him to go into primarily television work for the balance of his career, and he didn't really make any other what I would call landmark films in horror or elsewhere. And this was after, making the 2 Dr. Phibes movies. On the other hand, Fuse does some things really well. I think the movie is beautifully shot in Durango, Mexico. which doubles as the American Southwest for the film. There are moments of terror mixed with paranoia. Even with all the weaknesses we've talked about, that headlining cast and the controversial inclusion of LaVey as a consultant make this movie a fascinating part of horror history. In summary, in my mind, it's not a great movie, certainly not a classic, but it is entertaining. It's full of atmosphere, and as you say, is very, very creepy. I may be a little generous here, but I'm going to go 3 stars for The Devil's Reign. Tracy, what do you think? What's your ranking?
Well, it's one of those satanic panic era movies. I thought it was really campy, cult classic, and people need to give it a chance. I did only give it 2.5 stars. But that's because I thought it was just a really weird way to start the movie off with. And it was a little confusing. But you know what? There was so much potential. And if they would have kind of upped their game just a little bit, I think it could have been super phenomenal. But yeah, 2.5 stars. And I'm curious, would you recommend this movie to someone looking for a good horror flick or just someone looking for a weird movie to watch?
I think it qualifies on both counts. I think if you're a horror fan, this is a movie you have to see at least once.
Yeah.
And if you're a diehard horror fan, like I guess we are, it's maybe a film you have to see a few times to try to understand it better.
Yeah.
So I think definitely it's worthwhile. It has that atmosphere of those satanic films that came out like Race with the Devil, Rosemary's Baby, although it's a very different movie and certainly a masterpiece, but it has that kind of feeling of paranoia, especially over the first half of the movie.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things that really attracts me to it. So yeah, I definitely think it's worthwhile. See it at least once. And if you saw enough the first time, watch it a couple more times to see if you can better figure out and then maybe explain it to me.
That's a good way to put it.
All right. So that's the first of the 2 films we're breaking down on this episode of the podcast. Tracy says 2.5 stars for The Devil's Reign. I go slightly better, 3 stars for this film that came out in August of 1975. So we'll take a short break now. When we come back, we will have a film from 1965, 60 years ago, also dealing with the occult, but it's very different from The Devil's Reign. It's an underrated movie from Amicus called The Skull. Stay with us. We'll be right back on the Ghostly Gallery podcast. Welcome back to this episode of the Ghostly Gallery podcast. Bruce Markison along with Tracy Asteria. We've talked about the first film on our double bill. That's The Devil's Reign. Now we move on to the second feature. This is the oft overlooked 1965 release from Amicus, known simply as The Skull. The Skull is a stylish film. It stars Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, and Patrick Wymark. And it begins with a flashback to the 19th century when a man desecrates the grave of the infamous Marquis de Sade, steals his skull, and then brings it home with him. As he tries to clean the skull in some kind of bath of acid, the man is killed, apparently the result of the skull's power. And this is all to the shock of his girlfriend, who is in the bedroom next door. From there, we move forward to the current day, and that's modern day London and an auction taking place. So Peter Cushing, the central figure, plays Christopher Maitland. He is a renowned collector of ancient occult artifacts, and he is outbid by another collector who happens to be a friend of his, Sir Matthew Phillips, played by Christopher Lee. The 2 men are bidding to acquire artifacts depicting various sinister figures and demons of all kinds. So Phillips wins out on the bidding. But Maitland, shortly thereafter, is able to purchase a book about the Marquis de Sade from a disreputable middleman named Anthony Marco. And he is adept at acquiring these kinds of occult artifacts. The next night, Marco then offers Maitland a follow-up artifact, and it's the actual skull of the Marquis de Sade, referenced in that opening sequence, but the price is hefty, £1,000. What that translates into American money, I have no idea, but I'm pretty sure that £1,000 in 1965 was a lot of dough. Maitland rejects the deal, saying, hey, that's way too expensive for a skull that you're not really able to authenticate. Marco says, I know it's the Marquis' skull, but Maitland is kind of skeptical. He'd like further proof documentation that Marco is not able to provide to him. Well, Marco eventually lowers his price to £500, so he cuts it in half. And this gives Maitland cause to consider it a little bit more carefully. He says, give me a night to think about it, then I'll get back to you. But after experiencing these really weird, nightmarish hallucinations, Maitland then decides to gather up the money, and he goes to Marco's apartment on his own. To his surprise, when he arrives in the apartment, he finds that Marco is dead, his throat ripped open as if done by some vicious kind of animal. Maitland calls the police, but only after hiding the skull in a hallway closet. Maitland is then warned by Matthew Phillips, the other collector who's a longtime friend of his. They're not rivals at all. And Phillips tries to give him some friendly advice. He says to Maitland, get rid of the skull because it has the ability to possess its owner and force him into committing violent acts, while also putting the owner in great danger himself. And Phillips knows what he's talking about because he earlier owned the skull and claimed that Marco stole it from him. But during the time that Phillips owned the skull, he noticed that it had an effect on him. He observed that. And that's why he wasn't all that upset when Marco stole the skull from him. Unfortunately, Maitland ignores all of this advice. He keeps the skull, and that's going to lead to all sorts of additional trouble for Maitland and some of the people around him. So that's the basic storyline to the film, The Skull. Tracy, let's get some of your initial thoughts on the movie. What'd you think?
I thought this one was really quite promising. I like Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee. I think they both work phenomenal together. And, the storyline just of the occult and just the creepy artifacts was intriguing. And, after the initial segment of the 19th century flashback, I was kind of hooked. And I definitely look forward to the rest of the story. So I was curious how the skull was going to come into play and what kind of, mysteries that we might be watching throughout this movie. So I was excited to see it. This was, on a different level than The Devil's Reign. So, you've got two real classic actors in this film. And yeah, I was just looking forward to it. Absolutely.
Well, we'll see if the film held up for you. One of the interesting parts of The Skull is the depiction of the Marquis de Sade. Obviously, this is a real-life person. He was a French writer and political activist who was known for debauchery and sadism and was actually imprisoned on more than one occasion for various sex crimes and filming pornography. But the film, The Skull, actually exaggerates his portrayal. It gives us the impression that the Marquis was involved with Satanism, which he was not, and that he murdered people, and there's no evidence of that ever being the case. I mean, I'm not saying he was a good guy or anything, but The Skull definitely exaggerates the evil nature of the Marquis de Sade. In addition to Cushing, we of course have Lee as Matthew Phillips. His role is relatively small compared to Cushing. And then you have another British actor, Patrick Wymark, and he plays the more significant part of Marco, who during the first half of the movie is very prominent. And he's kind of a bit of a shady guy who procures the skull and various other artifacts for Maitland. They've obviously had a working relationship for a long time. And even though people in Maitland's house don't really like Marco, including his wife, they don't like him coming around, but Maitland has come to trust him. Usually when he comes around, he has something legitimate to offer, and usually the price is in the ballpark. And this role of Marco, I think, is really well handled by Wymark. He would later star in The Blood on Satan's Claw, which is an excellent movie. He was a terrific actor and sadly ended up dying very young. There are some other very fine actors in the cast of The Skull. We have Nigel Green, Patrick McGee, and Michael Goff, but their roles are all so small that they really don't have a chance to have much impact, and that's a little bit unfortunate. So those are the key players in the film. Tracy, what did you think of some of these individual performances?
Oh my gosh, I would have loved to have seen more interaction with Lee and Cushing. I mean, they're the dynamic duo of that time period, right? And I think just if I could have seen more of them together, I think that would have been awesome. Um, I think Lee played the role really well for the length of screen time that he had, which really wasn't a long period of time, but he was great. He's always so suave and, right to the point. Like I thought he did really great.
Yeah.
And Cushing was interesting as the collector, but that one scene where he was like kidnapped by the two men who were maybe police officers and taken to the police station, and it just kind of came out of nowhere. And the whole
Mhm.
Russian roulette game was a little bit off the wall and bizarre, but he did well with it. It was just really weird to see him like just really weird. But I thought they were both great, and the little character Marco was interesting, and the actor did really well. I thought he was kind of like, shady and creepy and in his own little way. And he really suited that image of the acquirer of the eclectic goods. He really had me though when he pulled out this book and he told Cushing that it was made out of skins.
Yeah.
It's just like,
That's,
ew.
yeah.
But like on an interesting side note though, a cool little addition might have been Vincent Price. I think this is his kind of movie.
Yeah.
I think he would have added to the quirkiness of this story. So kind of sad he wasn't in it, but I think he would have been a great little addition to the story. So yeah.
Yeah. Tracy, you go back to Cushing and Lee, and this was probably their 11th or 12th movie that they'd done together.
Wow.
But in almost all the other ones, certainly the earlier ones, they're either rivals or they're pitted against each other in some
Mhm.
way. Cushing is Van Helsing, Lee is Dracula, or Cushing is Dr. Frankenstein. Lee in one film is Frankenstein, the monster himself. They're often rivals. Cushing sometimes is good. Lee, most of the time, certainly in Hammer films, almost all the time, except for The Devil Rides Out, he is an evil character, a sinister character. This is a film where they're friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're both collectors and they're bidding against the same, on the same artifacts at the same auctions. But you can tell that this is not a heated rivalry. They have respect for each other. They are longtime friends. After that early scene where Christopher Lee's character outbids Maitland, Maitland goes up to him in a very friendly way and says, "Why did you bid so much money for these artifacts? I mean, they're okay. I would have liked to have had them at a certain price, but you paid way beyond what they're worth. Why'd you do that?" And then Christopher Lee's character, who apparently is under the spell of the skull at this point,
Mhm.
says, "I don't really know why." He was just sort of compelled to get them. And he just felt like there was a power that came over him. So I thought it was very interesting to see these two actors in a friendly role because in real life they were friends.
Interesting. Oh, well, I mean, that's a really good way to put it. I mean, they have good on-screen and off-screen chemistry.
Yeah, they billed Lee as a guest star. So when you saw that in the credits, that was probably a signal that he wasn't going to have all that much screen time. I
Mm.
think he's in 3 or 4 scenes total. I wouldn't call it a minor role, but he's certainly not co-starring. Cushing is clearly the star of this film, and I'm guessing that you know Lee was paid a lesser amount of money to fulfill this so-called guest star spot. We look at this film, and I think it's held back on a couple of ways. First of all, The special effects, they're fairly simple. Though I do think it's creative how the director, Freddie Francis, gives us at times the point of view of the skull. So we see what the skull is seeing when the skull looks at the people in the room, looks at the latest people who have acquired the skull. That's kind of ominous. I think that's kind of a cool thing. So I like that part. The part where, you see the skull floating through the mansion, a little bit hokey. I think the wires are visible in that. But it's best they could do probably for the mid 1960s. And the other problem we've talked about is there's so little screen time for Christopher Lee. I mean, he's a headlining talent. He's excellent in the role, but he's billed just as the guest star. And without him, being at the same level as Cushing or, being a real rival to Cushing, we lose something. They're not the dynamic duo here that they were in other films. They're both good, but it's imbalanced. One is at, high level and the other is with a smaller part. So I do think with a larger budget, more prominent role from Lee, this is a movie that might have become a classic. I like it. It's good, but it falls short of being, a 4.5 star film. Now, with some of these drawbacks, let's give credit to the director, Freddie Francis. He overcomes problems through very fine cinematography. And we're used to seeing that from him with Hammer. He directed a number of Hammer films. I particularly like the way that he uses light to illuminate the skull at various times. I thought that was well done. And even though it is hokey watching the disembodied skull float through the mansion, there's something charming about it too. And as with most Amicus productions, the sets are beautiful. They're always lavish, eye-catching. They never seem to have much money, but somehow they're always able to either create or obtain these sets that are beautiful for the time period. And in this case, it's the time period of the 1960s, but they do catch your eye. And that's always the case. We had a program we did a while back where we looked at the Amicus anthologies. Same thing, not a big budget, but the films visually always look nice. The sets are great. And that's the same thing here with the skull. Overall, good, solid film from Francis. One that's creepy. It's atmospheric. It's also another film that I think would be fun to see in a remake with more substantial special effects. Again, I'd love to see a very capable contemporary director take this film on, maybe make it a little bit more complicated, make the story a little bit more advanced in some ways. But even as is, I really like the movie. I think it's very good. I go with 3.5 stars for The Skull. So, Tracy, what do you think? Am I way off on this one, way off base, or am I close to being accurate?
I think you're pretty much on track. I thought it was a decent movie. The cast was great. Creepy vibes, dreary, weird, but cool atmosphere. It was only an hour and 20 minutes, I think, about that, which
could have been longer, right?
Yeah, it could have been a little bit longer to maybe give a little more story. Of course, it gave me a giggle or two just to see that floating skull and actually see the wires or the string holding it up. Because I'm not used to seeing stuff like that in movies. Anyway, I digress. But anyway, the story could have been a bit deeper, make it a little bit longer. Good watch. I was expecting, a few more skull appearances or, skull hijinks going on, but that didn't really happen. But honestly, it was worth my $4.99 plus tax to rent this on YouTube. And I give it 3 stars, and I truly feel it's something that if you haven't seen it, go out and watch it. It's available. Some of these old movies are really great, and this is one of them. And quite honestly, I don't think I heard of it before until you brought this into the picture. So, pretty cool watch.
It is available on streaming, and it's a service I just became aware of. A friend of mine who's a big fan of the show, Don Leibel, told me about the service. It's called Fossum TV. and that's spelled Fawesome. So it's the word awesome with F at the beginning, and I guess that's for free because it's a free service. They do have commercials, which is fine.
Mhm.
So if you can find the app for Fawesome, it is free of charge, and you can see the skull there. By the way, Tracy, I have my own version
Oh,
of the skull. And this is a baseball version with a helmet, double ear flaps, as you can see. And I
wow.
call
Oh, I
this
love
guy
it.
Sluggo. Now, if you're listening on Podbean, you can't see this, but if you're watching on YouTube, you can see Sluggo. And he does have a red baseball helmet with the double flaps, ready to play some ball. What do you think of Sluggo? Okay.
No, I love it. And do you put guide wires on him and make him float around the Hall of Fame? You should do that.
I don't do that, but I do keep it on my desk. And people who notice it look at it with a puzzled look. What is that doing here?
Oh, geez. You'll have to like randomly move it to different areas of your office.
So, yep, that's Sluggo. There you go.
Aw,
My own
he
version of
is
the skull.
cool.
Yeah. All right. So that is our review of the 1965 film The Skull. Far more frightening than my version of The Skull. Tracy goes 2.5 stars, and I give it 3 stars. I'm sorry. No, you gave it 3 stars. I gave it 3.5, right?
That's right. Yes.
I had it wrong there. So Tracy says 3 stars. I go a little bit higher, 3.5 stars for the 1965 movie The Skull. And of course, along with The Devil's Reign, it is definitely worth a watch. I think it's a movie that a lot of horror fans, unless you're a diehard, you maybe have not seen it, but certainly worth a look.
Yeah.
Well, Tracy, that's going to do it for this episode number 99. That sets us up for our milestone 100th episode coming up.
Absolutely. And tonight was fun. And next episode will be funner. Is that a word? Funner.
It
Funner.
is. It is. And it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have 2 guests join us, 2 people really instrumental to us starting this podcast a couple of years ago and soon to be 100 episodes ago. And that's as much as I'll tell you for the moment.
Absolutely.
Tracy, thanks as always. Great contributions on our 2 movies, The Devil's Reign and The Skull. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a blast. And thanks for coaxing on the Devil's Reign.
Absolutely. We want to thank all of you for listening and watching as well. We do appreciate you joining us in this Museum of the Macabre. And as always, we hope to see you again next time right here in the Ghostly Gallery.